Hello, you guys. I'm happy to be here. Let's see. So, I am delighted. I want to say that all of your past podcasts, I've known those people. I wish I'd been here to hear it live, but now I'm going to have to listen to the podcast, like the rest of the world. So I know that they've been great, and I'm hoping this one will be as good as well. So I want to talk about a new organizational structure, which is really how we are redesigning how we build businesses, how we work, and ultimately how we shape entire economies. And I'm calling this Peers Inc. There are 3 building blocks of this, 3 components. So it's leveraging excess capacity on a platform for participation and inviting in the collaboration of peers. And as I say, I'm calling this Peers Inc. with these 3 major components that I'll be describing. And it really is completely transforming our economies, and I'll explain this as we go through. If you think about all of these companies that we've been talking about them for the last 15 years, and I would just throw down the side, like the free and open source movement, I think of it as a Peers Inc. collaboration. When we talk about massive online open coursework, that's a Peers Inc. collaboration. Etsy and co-work, co-housing, crowdfunding, crowd collaboration, all of those are Peers Inc. collaborations. And just to choose one to talk about, let's look at Skype. Just think that Skype is a telecommunications company that was built on the back of my excess capacity of my laptop that I bought, my video camera, and my internet connection. And they built an entire telecommunications company on the back of my excess capacity. So if I think about this idea of working with excess capacity, it's fundamentally an act of sharing, because you're not controlling that entire asset. You're having to share it with someone else when you're thinking about excess capacity. And my favorite example here would be bed sharing. And I don't know if you guys do bed sharing, but I do a lot of bed sharing because I travel around the world and I like to stay at friends' houses. And so if I'm lucky, I get to stay in their excess capacity, multi-purpose home office and guest bedroom, and that's great. And if I'm really lucky, I get a double bed. Yahoo! Wait, that's great. Top of the line guest bedroom. If I'm unlucky, they told the teenager, you go sleep on the couch, Rob gets your room, and I think, no. And that is why we have hotels. It was interesting that when people thought Zipcar was so revelatory and so amazing, it's an exact same business model as hotels. You want to maximize the return on asset over a 7-day week. So it's very, very much like hotels, which are effectively bed sharing. So I went to do some research. What was the largest bed sharing companies in the world? And so here we have the Intercontinental Hotels Group. It's been around for 100 years, built 650,000 rooms. And we can know that that was really, really hard work because the number 2, Hilton, has been around for 93 years and has fewer rooms. And you know what I'm going to say. Airbnb, in its 4th year, had 650,000 rooms. And I say, oh my God, how in heck did they disrupt an entire sector in 4 years? And we can talk about couch surfing where no money changes hands, and in its 9th year, it had 250,000 places to stay in every country in the world. So the question is, what is happening, and how can we do that? How can we understand it? So if I think about why did we ever invent a company or a government or a big institution, we invented them, we create them to do things that we as individuals can't do. And I think of these as industrial strengths. So what are industrial strengths? If I have to do something that costs millions of dollars, I don't have millions of dollars. I had to create Zipcar to get those millions of dollars to do something. If it's going to require lots of kinds of intelligence, I can be brilliant at 2 things, but if it's going to take 10 things, I have to get a group together. I have to bring people together. If it's going to require standards or standardization, I, as an individual, can't force anybody to do things the same way each and every time. You have to have a big entity with some heft to get those standards done. Typically, these strengths and benefits are bound up in a global company and have a brand promise. If I think about individual strengths, and I want to lump in there small NGOs and local companies, they have things that they do that big companies can't do. So if we think about customization and localization and specialization, big companies can do those things, they don't want to do them. And if you think about the last 150 years of the industrial economy, it has been all about ripping out the customized, localized, and specialized to make these big standardized products, get economies of scale, and lower the price. So it turns out that these two things are very complementary. And what has changed is we now have the internet. And so dealing with lots of small parts has very low transaction costs. So for the first time ever, we have this new collaborative organizational structure that never ever could happen before, where we can get the best of both worlds. We don't have to decide one or the other. We can have them both simultaneously. And so I call it Peers Inc., and the Inc. develops a platform for participation, and the peers deliver a diversity of offering. And if I simplify this, I think of it very much as a yin-yang, and it's very complementary and symbiotic, and each side has to leave enough value on the table for the other side to work, to want to participate. And it's all swimming in this sea of excess capacity. So I'm going to go through these things. So excess capacity. I love it as an environmentalist because it's very resource efficient, and I love it as a business person because it's very cost effective. And I'm defining excess capacity as something that already exists. It's already been paid for, but there's more value there. And if I leave you with one idea, it is this idea, and I'm going to try to give you many, many examples. It's not just physical stuff. It can be resources and networks and time of day. So think about this excess capacity. Once you find it, so think hard about it and look for it. Once you find it, there are three things you can do with it. Number one, you can slice it. And that's what Zipcar did. Zipcar took an asset that you used to have to buy a whole car or rent a car for a whole 24 hours, even though you wanted it just for 2 hours or just 5% of the time. You were forced to buy more than you wanted. And so Zipcar said, hey, we'll take this big bundle and we'll sell you just what you want. You just pay as you go. We'll slice it up. Or you could be like Airbnb. You can aggregate it. So Airbnb took all these millions of places, little hidden excess capacity around the world, put them all together onto one platform. And that one platform has one insurance product and a standard way of paying and communicating, so I can compare and contrast. And it has a wholly different feeling than if it were a million different places, right? It's a totally different value proposition. And the third thing you can do with excess capacity is to slice it. And I would say this is kind of the most exciting thing you can do, which is to say, hey, I've got this excess capacity. What good ideas do you guys have? And so here my example would be open data. So McKinsey did this report. More than 40 countries have opened up more than 1 million data sets, and they say, hey, you know what? There's $3 trillion worth of value there. So imagine that it was my taxes or my census tract or my MBT, my transit authority, and I was happy. I paid for that. I loved that data. I used it. It was great. And now with standard open APIs, I'm opening up that data and saying, hey, you guys around the world, what would you do with this? What new value can you extract out of it? So let's look at what does the Inc. do. The Inc. creates the platform for participation, and with it, I think of it gives platformness, as in it organizes all the small parts, it makes complex things very simple, and it gives the power of the large to the small. And if you're really lucky when you do this, you can get economies of scale and have this really, really high growth. So my example here is a company I love called BlaBlaCar. It's French. It's actually throughout Europe right now. And so the excess capacity is I'm driving from Paris to Berlin in my own car. I have my 3 empty seats, and they sell those seats. And so they are now moving more than 4 million people every month, which is the same as 10,000 high-speed trains or 10,000 747s. But remember, they didn't lay a track or build a car. They now have 60 million members who are using this. And this growth curve is very typical of platform companies. They actually started in 2006. You go along, iterating, figuring out what your platform's going to look like, and then you finally get it. And once you get it, perfect it, you have this exponential curve growth. And so how did they accomplish this? They found excess capacity, and they harnessed it on the platform for participation and invited in the collaboration of others. So just look at the peers. What do they deliver? The peers give a diversity of offering, and it's this leveraging of diversity that makes this business model, this organizational structure, better than any other one. And so it's giving innovation and resilience and redundancy. And so let me give you an example here. If you think of the smartphone and apps, the smartphone is your platform. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars to develop a smartphone and do the operating system. Whereas the apps, there's probably people in this room who are clever enough to build an app themselves. And what's been remarkable about the apps is the explosion of growth. Smartphones are about 10 years old now, and we've had more than 2 million different types of apps have been developed over that time. And so how is it possible? It's because each one of us in our own lives and our life experience are able to say, hey, with this smartphone and its capabilities, what are the things that I could imagine doing with it? And your smartphone is just, I paid $600 for it one time, and all of those apps are leveraging my access capacity, my location, my contacts. None of them, or very few of those apps, would carry the value of the whole smartphone itself, right? So we're just leveraging this excess capacity. If I think about Peers Inc., it has these characteristics that are so phenomenal, I think of them as miraculous. And I want to tell you what these 3 miracles that this Peers Inc. structure brings. But before I do that, I want to depress you deeply so that then you can feel this release of, oh, how great, I really appreciate the miracles. So if I think about what is the most depressing thing in the world, that would be climate change. And so I'm going to show you a graph that is this year hotter or colder than the 20th century average? And so if you've been born since 1980, which a bunch of you have been, you have never in your life experienced a colder than average year. And so here is 2015, here's 2016, 2017, and 2018 just came out as in that group. And so we've already warmed the planet by 1 degree centigrade. But if you're like me, scientists are predicting if we do business as usual, we will warm the planet by 5 or 6 degrees centigrade by 2100. So the question is, what does it mean? What does it feel like to warm a planet by 5 degrees? Like, I have no idea, so I had to go do some research to put this into context for myself. And it turns out that the last ice age, that was 20,000 years ago, was minus 4.5 degrees. And this is, some of you can see this, this is skylines with ice over top. So think of all of North America and Europe under kilometers of ice. And my bed in Boston, where I sleep, was under 1.5 kilometers of ice. So if you want to understand what it feels like to warm a planet by 4.5 degrees over 20,000 years, that's me sleeping in my bed today versus under 1.5 kilometers of ice. And we're going forward that amount in 85 years. So if you haven't figured out that this is an existential crisis, will there be humans living? How many of them will be living? When we move forward 4.5 degrees, it's that amount of climate movement. So needless to say, this is how I spend my entire every waking breath is addressing this issue. So my friend Bani Banerjee at Stanford had this lovely sentence. You can't solve exponential problems with linear solutions. And that is what we're doing with climate change. And so I say, you know what? Try Peers Inc. Now for the miracles, which I know you're really ready for. This is what gives me hope and inspires me. So miracle number 1. Because we are leveraging excess capacity, we can defy the laws of physics. What do I mean by that? If in 2000, instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to invent Zipcar, I said, you know what, I'm going to build the largest hotel chain in the world. I'm going to build 650,000 rooms in 100 countries, and I'm going to do it in 4 years. You guys would have all said, physically impossible, Robin. There's no way that can happen. You can't go find the land, hire the architect, finance it, build it, put the furniture in, hire the staff, make no mistakes, do that in 4 years. Physically impossible. And so this is what business as usual asset building would look like over 6 years. And here's Airbnb's growth. Why? Because they leveraged existing excess capacity on a platform for participation and invited in the collaboration of others. So when I think about climate change or any big issue that you care to think about, I know it has to have this structure. We have no time to have any other structure. I don't have time to build a high-speed rail on the West Coast. By the time that gets built, we will have already warmed the planet by another 3 degrees. We have to do stuff leveraging existing assets we have right now. Miracle number 2. Because we're building on a platform for participation, we can tap exponential learning. If you think about learning, it's all about the number of iterations you get. And so I, as an individual, get a certain number of iterations, and we think of companies as getting more iterations, and platforms, if they're clever and looking at their data, will get even more iterations. So my example here will be how quickly you can learn a foreign language. And the unit of measurement is what can you learn in a semester of college, which is 130 hours. It used to be that the Rosetta Stone was like the #1 product because they would teach you a semester of French in only 54 hours. Whoa, great, my boss is paying for it. I'm doing the Rosetta Stone. My new favorite company is Duolingo. Duolingo will teach you a semester in 34 hours. How is that possible? When I talk to the CEO, he says, Robin, every single question we ask is an A/B test. And overnight, we'll have 150,000 people take that test, and they'll tell us which is the better way to teach the foreign language. And so they've whittled it down to 34 hours. Their growth curve will be looking very much like the others. They were founded in 2013. They are now teaching 300 million people how to do it. So if you're thinking to yourself, what was the excess capacity? The excess capacity was how Robin Chase fails on tests no one cared about for 60 years, and Louis Van Naan said, whoa, there's some really important information to that, and he leveraged that and figured out what to do with it. Another way that Duolingo is leveraging excess capacity is if you think about language learning, it comes in pairs. My native tongue is English, and I want to learn Spanish. My native tongue is English, and I want to learn Czechoslovakian. 2 years ago, he opened up the processes of Duolingo, and 50% of these learners are learning language pairs that Duolingo did not originate. Miracle number 3. Because we work with a diversity of peers, the right person will appear. And I don't mean Superman, like, so what? He's strong and can fly. Everyone in this room is already way better than Superman because you have your smartphone and you know, what's the weather going to be like there? Pouring rain. You know, how am I going to get there? Who are the experts? You know all those things. And so my example here, because it's quick, we'll be back to this. In December 2014, Obama said, you know what? I'm going to normalize relations with Cuba. In 6 months, there were 2,000 listings. It cannot happen at this pace any other way. It requires this structure. So the key to remember is that Peers Inc. is a collaboration. You can't just be one side, which is why I wrote this book that we talk about the platform economy and we talk about the gig economy. And I want to tell you, it is both halves of the equation. It's not one without the other. So we can defy the laws of physics only because we have a platform that's organizing and unleashing this excess capacity, and it's the peer co-investing their assets. We can tap exponential learning because of the hundreds of thousands of ways people are doing things, and the platform is doing the analysis and saying, oh, best practice, let me make that easier. Oh, worst practice, let me make that hard. And the right person will appear, that needle will come out of the haystack because the platform is doing this huge, deep supercomputing. So my closing 2 slides. I believe that we are profoundly moving from industrial capitalism, which I would define as companies that had a very strong barrier put around them. The barrier was, through patents and certifications, trademarks, and it was really, really clear what was inside the company was outside the company. And today, because the internet exists, we are moving to this new collaborative economy where things are very, very murky. Is this my personal car or is it my work car? Who is contributing this data? Is this work time or not work time? Is this commercial use or private use? Everything is all mushed and fuzzy. So I'm going to leave you with 4 principles that, for me, are true. And if you believe they are true, you too know that we're moving from industrial capitalism, where it used to be to extract the most value out of things, you would shut it down and hold it tight. And we're moving to this new collaborative economy where openness is the way that you extract the most value. So, sharing is the future. Shared networked assets always give more value than closed proprietary ones. And we know it happens 2 ways. One, that networked asset is being much, much more efficiently used. Or 2, brand new values are being extracted out of it. So shared networked assets are better than closed proprietary ones. This is one you've known for a long time. You guys in this room are incredibly smart, but you've always known there's more smart people statistically out of the room. The internet now exists. We can find those people. More networked people are more customized, more localized, more specialized, more creative, more any single thing you want to say than the people in this room or the people in this city or in this company or in this country. This is the fact. There's more outside. The benefits of shared and open assets are larger than the problems associated with open assets. The people who didn't want to invest in Zipcar said, oh, people are going to have car accidents. They're not going to tell you about it. You know what? There's a small fraction of people who do bad things. Those rise to the top. We figure it out. We penalize them, and if they keep being bad, we throw them out. Meanwhile, there are 1 million people who are sharing 13,000 cars around the world. The benefits of shared open assets are larger than the problems associated. And lastly, I'm selfish. I only do things that are for me, me, me. When I participate in these, I get more than I give. I edit 2 lines in Wikipedia, and I, Robin Chase, get the world's largest encyclopedia, 5 million entries that I can use. I reserve Zipcar 2 times, and I personally have access to these 13,000 cars in cities around the world. So I put in my little bit, and I get this whole big thing. So what I know is that this is the structure for the dynamic times that we live in today. This is the structure that allows us to experiment, iterate, adapt, and evolve at the fastest pace and with the most localization happening. So I want to leave you with this idea of how do we Peers Inc. as much as we can. How are we the platform, or are we going to be the peers? Where is there excess capacity? And let's pull this together. I'm going to bring my colleague Gabe Klein up now, who's going to talk about some examples of how we do this in cities, because I've been giving a lot of examples in the private sector.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, I guess I don't need this. Thank you, Robin. So, for those of you that don't know, Robin and I have known each other for like 16 years, and I was watching your presentation. I think the biggest difference between us, if I had to sum it up, is like I'd want to sleep in that teenager's bedroom with the Beastie Boys poster on the wall. You know, I'll be the guy drinking beer, you'll be drinking wine. Anyway, but no, that was a great presentation, and it really ties really well into the sharing of other things like public space. So I had the opportunity to work with Robin at Zipcar and work in other startups as well, but then get to try to apply those startup skills in government, which was extremely challenging and fun and interesting. And so what I want to talk about for about 5 minutes is this idea of, let's say, things like shared mobility, which we all love, whether it's the bus or the train or Zipcar or the scooters that you see all over. But without space to utilize them, they can only grow so much. Those platforms can actually only scale so much because they'll be limited by the physical infrastructure that has you guys too scared to use them. Or they won't be fast enough, in the case of the bus, for instance. And so the concept of induced demand is really important. It's something that we overlook. Who remembers or heard about, for most of you, the Embarcadero that fell down in San Francisco, the freeway on the waterfront? So when that fell down, the prediction from Caltrans was that it was going to be a disaster, that traffic the next day was going to back up for miles and miles and miles, and to their surprise, nothing happened. People aren't dumb. They made other choices. They got on BART, right? They did other things. And what the studies show is that when you do add that extra lane of capacity on your highway, for instance, it helps for 2 months. And then because we're human beings and we like to do what we're told, we're being told to go buy a car and drive in that lane of excess capacity. Or when we give people the free parking at the office, they're like, I'm being told that I should drive to my free parking space. And so they do. And then the traffic problem gets worse. And time after time after time, when we get rid of the capacity, and we have a ton of capacity right now. How many of you have heard of autonomous vehicles, for instance, right? We could potentially cut 50% of the vehicles on the roads. And that's not necessarily in a dense urban area. So when we close roads, people make other choices. When we give capacity to other modes, like I did in Chicago, when we said we're going to build 645 miles of bike lanes, 100 of them protected bike lanes like this one, and we said we're going to take capacity right downtown. And we took it so that people could share the space, right? And they did. And we put some technology at the intersection so that people could trigger the signals with their bikes or trigger them with their cars. We added turn lanes. One thing I learned is that we have not optimized our roadways in many cases in 50, 60 years. They're operating the same way, the same crappy signal systems. And so there's this opportunity to reallocate space for things like walking and biking, for zip cars to be parked on the street, for buses, and not to see a big impact in traffic, particularly if you take into account that people are going to move from one mode to the other. They're not going to keep doing the same thing if you give them options. So I want to talk very quickly about local streets and arterial streets, because people are like, well, Should we be sharing lanes? Should we have separate lanes for everything? It all depends on the type of road and the speed of vehicles, the number of vehicles, and how big they are and how heavy they are. So on a local street, you want to share the space between all the modes as much as possible. On average, like 12 to 17 miles per hour, which, by the way, is how fast vehicles typically move through a city on average. And at that speed, people are safe sharing the space, walking, biking, driving. But on the bigger arterial streets where you have these 20,000-pound tractor trailer trucks and buses and speeds at more like 30 miles per hour, you want to segregate traffic. You want to segregate modes. And that's an important concept. Now, the thing is, taking space is hard, right? Politically, it's hard. So I just wrote an article in Forbes in December with an idea, a creative idea, putting my entrepreneurial hat back on, but for government, and saying, what if we took a lot of these 4-lane roads and we just said, instead of making it a bike lane, we make it a slow lane. You can still drive your car. You can ride a bike. You can ride a scooter. Hell, I don't care if you run in it or rollerblade or get on one of those one wheels, whatever you want to do, but you got to keep to 15 miles per hour. So people will self-select out of it. They'll self-select into the regular lane that goes 25 miles per hour if they want to go fast. By the way, they've been doing this in Europe for a long time. It's called a Fietsstraat in the Netherlands, a bike priority lane. Typically on a local street, this is looking at what would we do on a bigger street. Doesn't mean you don't want the beautiful grade-separated infrastructure in the future, but how do we make more change now faster, as Robin was talking about? We don't have time to waste. And the streets are a platform, right? And so transportation platforms exist. And so we tend to think, well, the transit system is a sinkhole of cost, right? Not only do you have to spend a ton of money building it, then you got to operationally subsidize it, which, by the way, we do in this country because not enough people use it because we incentivize people to use cars. But putting that aside for a second, driving is the most subsidized form of transportation. 6 times what transit is. And walking and biking can be break even or throw off profit because when you look at the secondary, tertiary cost benefit, which we typically don't do, you look at the 30-year cost for sustainability and health and all of that, it's basically free. You get 64 times the ROI, return on investment, on a bike lane than you do from adding that highway lane. And so ultimately what we're starting to do in the transportation space is start thinking less about level of service and how fast we're moving people and looking at the quality of life of the trip, the quality of life in general. You can't really look at transportation, for instance, in a silo anymore. It's the number one emitter of CO2 emissions since 2016 is transportation. It's not the power plants anymore or housing and buildings. So we have to get a handle on this. And if you look at the United States, we are the richest, but that doesn't translate to the happiest. We're 18th happiest. And I would encourage people to look at the infrastructure in the top 10 countries. Not that that's the only thing. They also have free university and healthcare and various other things. But they are not beholden to a car. And it's a combination of carrots and sticks that get you there. In Copenhagen, when I was there last time, I was talking to some folks in the government. They said, well, you buy a Toyota Camry, it costs how much? I said, $30,000. He said, here it's $90,000. You pay a 200% tax. But you get all this beautiful infrastructure, and it's almost nothing to ride the trams or ride your bike. So with that, I think we'll have a conversation, and we have a few more slides we can refer to if we need to. Thank you.